If you haven't been watching every episode of FamiThon, then you wouldn't have noticed how much Namco dominated the 80s arcade scene. Hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. Galaxian, Pac-Man, Xevious, Mappy, Galaga, Dig Dug, Warpman. And that's just the titles that were released on the Famicom. There was also Rally X, Pole Position, Super Pac-Man, and the likes. They were the Beatles of the classic arcade era. But there is one more arcade game that conquered the gaming scene, at least in Japan, we have yet to mention. 1984's The Tower of Druaga. Mentioned before in the Xevious review, this was the second game by Masanobu Endo, a game developer who was a bit of a celebrity in early 80s Japan just for going on talk shows and such talking about Xevious. If Xevious made Endo famous, the Tower of Druaga made him a superstar because Masanobu figured out exactly what the Japanese public loved: action role-playing games taking place in medieval times. The Tower of Druaga has set the stage for what would eventually create the action role-playing game, and would be the grandfather of all influences, such as Dragon Slayer, Hydlide, Ys, and of course, The Legend of Zelda. Japan absolutely loves Tower of Druaga, where it's one of Namco's top franchises. Not many sequels that say Zelda, but many ports and even an anime series in 2008. The evil being Druaga kidnaps the young maiden Ki as well as the blue crystal rod. The hero of the story, Gilgamesh, must come to her aid and save her by climbing the Tower of Druaga, all 60 floors. The gameplay of Druaga is somewhat similar to The Legend of Zelda. You have a sword to attack with and a shield which can block enemy attacks. The enemies include slimes, which of course a Japanese game would have slimes, other knights, ghosts, and most annoyingly the wizards. Also a hard to dodge dragon much later on. The goal of each floor is to collect the key found on each floor to unlock the door and is on to the next floor. From the sound of that, the Tower of Druaga sounds pretty plain. Just collect the key to get to the next level? Well, that's actually part 2 of the goal. Part 1 is getting the hidden treasure chest hidden on each level. Inside will usually contain a treasure that will come in handy currently or later in the game. The most important one has to be the winged boots that'll actually help you walk much faster because the speed you walk in the beginning of the game is mind-meltingly slow. Others include a pickaxe that'll break a wall down, a candle that'll let you see ghosts, a bell that'll help locate the key, and extra weapons and armor to help you be stronger way up the tower. Now this sounds pretty cool, Legend of Zelda the arcade game, right? Well, here's the thing about Tower of Druaga. While finding treasure to be stronger in concept is cool, finding the treasure itself is a big, huge guessing game because you're going to have no clue how to find every treasure without a guide. And I mean absolutely need a guide. In early levels, it's pretty easy. Just kill a few enemies and bam, it's there. But later on, certain events will need to occur, like blocking the zap attack of enemies, waiting for the timer to clock down to a certain point, or just pressing the select button. But worst of all, it involves killing wizards, but I'll get to them in a second. It's pretty baffling such a game that involves a lot of blind guessing would catch on, but I guess this game blew the Japanese public's mind back in the day so much so that they didn't really care. The Famicom port is probably the best way to play Druaga because, guess what? It's pretty hard. But to curb that difficulty is the ability to continue just by pressing the continue button on the main menu. The first in a Famicom game. But even a game of this vintage shows its age, such as Gilgamesh's biggest flaw is actually swinging a sword to attack. Unlike Zelda where if you want to make a stab with your sword, bam, the enemy's dead. Here Gil needs to take a second to pull the sword out to stab it and a few seconds to put the sword away. Making quick attacks is impossible, especially towards those wizards I love to mention. A wizard's attack is to appear after Gil walks a few steps, fire their energy, then immediately disappear. And they fire their energy wave right towards you, so unless they spawn in a stupid direction, you're not hitting them. I spent at least 20 minutes on a stage where you had to kill every wizard, and I finally gave up and skipped the item. Thankfully, not every item is needed to beat the game. I can definitely say, the Tower of Druaga is not a game that you should really play today unless you're into old arcade games, gaming history, or want to be severely punished. That said, I didn't actually hate Druaga. It can be a pretty fun game when it's not in a very severely difficult stage. But if there's one thing to appreciate about Druaga, it's that it definitely feels like a title to signify the Famicom is changing from simple little games that are ports of arcade and computer titles to full-fledged adventures that go on for 60 levels right in the comfort of your own home.